Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just give another minute for latecomers to join us before we get started. Okay, I think that seems to be most people in. So, so hello, welcome to the last session of the EAMS conference for this week. We continue into next week with 3 more days. But this session is dedicated to updates from developers of various systems. I'm going to pull the program up. So, so this is an opportunity for developers to update on the latest features that they've been adding to their software and other things that have been going on. An opportunity for you to be able to ask questions directly to the people behind these systems. So we're going to hear from Chris Sanguin, developer of Stack, Christian Lawson Perfect, developer of Numbers, and Mike Gage, developer of WebWork. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Chris Sanguin.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everybody. And so I'm Chris Sanguin from the University of Edinburgh, and I'm the lead developer of the Stack online assessment system. And I'm going to give a quick developer update on what we've been up to. My slides being shared correctly, Chris, is that all good? Yep, right, thank you. Okay, good. Well, thanks, Christian, for giving me this hour to update you on what's been happening with Stack. I hope I can fit everything into the time available. We've got a huge amount going on, but let me just tell you a few things about Stack. So, I mean, Stack is an online assessment system. It's widely used, and I've put computer algebra at the core. It uses Maxima. So some key design things from Stack. We separate out validity from correctness so that students know what's required. They're not penalized on a technicality, and we can get some increased robustness in our marking. We can include those CAS calculations in the feedback, and I designed this really with formative feedback in mind as opposed to marking exams. Okay, I've tried as best as I can to provide useful tools to teachers so they can think at an educational level. So that would be, how do I test this property, rather than how do I write code to test this property, right? So there are things like answers tests, which test if something is in factored form, so that you can just ask for that property. We've got support for things like scientific units, flexible multi-part questions, question blocks. There is a line-by-line reasoning by equivalence, and a key feature which I'm surprised other systems haven't also implemented is unit testing of questions. So actually, students get randomly generated versions of a question. They select from a pre-generated random list of variants, and we can test that each random variant works and that's robust. So I hope other people have copied that, because it's really a very useful thing to do. Okay, Stack is designed for very tight quiz integration with both Moodle and Ilias. So it's part of the quiz system, and you can use the other quiz things associated with it. So if you haven't used Stack, let's go to the EAMS website on the Stack page. If you want to have a look as a student, you can click as a student here. If you want to try authoring as a teacher, you go to a separate site and you should come through as a teacher. There's an author quick start guide that many colleagues have managed to use quite successfully. There are other things here as well related to the Stack bit. And actually, George's session earlier talked about the e-assessment research, which is not just Stack. So we put some other non-Stack related things down here just to separate them out. Okay, so please have a look at the system if you've not already seen it and you're interested. So, well, really the big news is that we've moved from version 4.2 to version 4.3, which actually internally had a major re-engineering of some core components that have been there for 15 years. It was kind of long overdue, actually, and it took a year to do, and I'm hugely grateful, to Matty at Alto for instigating this, taking the lead and pushing that through. So thank you, Matty. The whole project is much more soundly engineered, and really the goal was no changes in features, which doesn't sound very exciting really, but just occasionally you have to go through those re-engineering processes and bring things up to date. As systems grow, they get more baggage with them, and at some point you have to clear this out. So I'm very pleased that what we've done, we've been using it in Edinburgh since January, and it's been very successful. Of course, there are a whole bunch of new features actually over the last year. We have a basic question use report, so teachers can see every attempt at every random version of every question and the outcomes that were generated. So that just quickly allows teachers to see what students are doing. We've added in-house styles for typesetting proof, which I will show you in a moment. We've got more compact validation and formative, more compact validation, which I will demonstrate, and something called formative potential response trees, so that now you can have some algorithms which will establish the properties you want and contribute to marks, but you can now also have some algorithms that are purely formative and just say things like, oh, by the way. Now those don't contribute in any way to the marks, right? And they're just, you can put them anywhere in the question. And that's just, I think, a very simple feature, but actually will change the way we can use this and really help us put much better feedback all over the place if we use it that way. Whole bunch of incremental improvements to reasoning by equivalence. I always think I haven't done anything, and then I look back through the commit logs as to what we've added, and there are a whole bunch of really significant things, including some support for calculus that wasn't there 2 years ago. So you can now do derivations, including calculus operations. I'm going to show you some semi-automatic marking stuff, human marking. We've got resizable matrix inputs that people have been asking for ages. That arose from the Stack conference last year. And then a whole bunch of other features for supporting real intervals and intersections and unions of intervals and equivalence of sets of real numbers, propositional logic, and sounds like a strange thing, but just as a support for tables. So a table is now a proper maxima object. You can define a table, and really the principal idea of that is to typeset tables in a consistent and easy way. So you might want the table of values for a function, or you might want a truth table. You might want to display the difference between two tables. If the you can then take a propositional logic expression from a student and typeset what they've entered against what you expected them to enter, right? So just a whole bunch of features like that. And I'm very open to suggestions on new features. Thank you everyone for your interest. I mean, Stack has over 1,100 registered sites. I'm in increasing contact with users. The multilingual support, both for the software itself and for multilingual content, is very strong. The Danish translation, I know that was completed very recently, so thank you, Malta, for contributing that. We have commercial partners, and we have embedding into these two well-used learning environments. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the case studies. So I and my colleagues, we produced case studies last year, and we printed booklets to give out at conferences this summer. So I and my colleagues have boxes of these to give to you, which is of no use to man nor beast, unfortunately. Fortunately, we have the PDF online, and I'm just now struggling to share my screen again because I'm being inept. Right, so here is the Stack Case Studies booklet. So please have a look at this, because there's a huge amount of news in here about what's going on with colleagues. We have details of George Kieran Richards Gratwick's fully online course, details of physics textbooks, a whole bunch of other things that are going on. We had hundreds of Kenyan undergraduates using servers in Edinburgh with their mobile phone, right? I mean, Stack is being used in all sorts of surprising ways, and increasingly so. So this was a result of an award of a collaborative excellence project in 2017, and last summer, we employed an intern who produced this case study booklet. So please have a look at those. Practical online assessment of proof. So I am spent the last couple of years, spending less time actually writing features and more time making best use of the features we've got. So again, this is not really a Stack thing actually. This would be useful to anyone who's teaching maths with an online assessment system, which is why I have put the link to our preprint on the research side. So there is a preprint on the archive where we have written about how to assess mathematical proof. And let me just give you I could give a whole hour's talk just about this topic. So if we go to, we're preparing for next year. Here is just a quiz about the Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, and the kind of thing we're doing with online assessment of proof is we're asking students about the definitions relevant to the proof. So what is this inequality all about? Can the students remember how to do a dot product? Can they remember how to calculate norms? Week 2 of year 1, when they've just encountered these things, just warm them up of what this is about. Then this is what I meant by styles for typesetting proofs. So we now have in-house styles for typesetting proofs. This is probably not the best use of that style, but because we haven't got sub-blocks in here. But we're asking the students to follow through a proof with some algebraic stuff. And here you see the compact validation that I mentioned. And students can U1 times V1 stuff. So they will expand out that, fill in the gaps in the proof, and they will have proved Cauchy-Schwarz inequality in R2. And there'll be technical terms like when equality holds, which they'll not have encountered before. So what Robbie and I in this paper have done is highlight things that you might want to test associated with a proof. Right? That's the general idea here. And we're developing proof sequences of questions that assess proof. I said yesterday in the WebWork talk, I don't think individual questions have much value. What I think has value is sequences of questions, carefully designed worksheets. I think that's the useful unit of exchange. So please have a look at that work, and I'm very, very open to comment and collaboration and discussion of what we're trying to do with proof. Semi-automatic marking was something else that we've discussed, and you can come through this human marking link here and just see a human marking question. So one feature in Stack that we've had for ages is that students could just type into the notes interface, and it automatically, if they put LaTeX in here, it automatically typesets it nicely. So, you know, this is not automatically assessed, but as part of the mix where the students answer a traditional auto-graded question next to a then justify question, which is human graded, I predict we're all going to make much more use out of that over the next year when we don't have students in front of us, right? So we can collect their work and then mark it by hand as part of the whole quiz process. So that's what I mean by semi-automatic marking work. Yes, cheesy metaphor about, I mean, I really think we're in just at a moment where this technology and its use is going to take off. So this is definitely a taking off metaphor rather than a sunset metaphor or fly away and leave you behind metaphor, right? I really think we're at quite an exciting moment with online assessment where its day is here, and we really need to make good use of it to help our students over the next academic year. Certainly in Scotland, I think the amount of face-to-face teaching will be quite limited, and we're going to have to make use of these tools. So, sophisticated, specialist, reliable tools, right? Stack, we have those. We have models for learning. The course fundamentals of algebra and calculus that we've spoken about before and is in the case study book is a model for how to design a whole course. We're thinking much more carefully about proof comprehension sequences as a way of not trying to assess a student's free-form proof. I think that's a long way away. I've thought a lot about that, and I'm still thinking about it. But I think this proof comprehension is something we can do now with the tools we've got. George mentioned this morning research that will inform our practice and our theory, and community developed materials. So the last thing I want to just mention is something which we are working on. So if I go back to our website in Edinburgh, who am I logged in as? I'm probably the EAMS student now, so I will log out and log back in again. Right. So this is grayed out because only teachers are allowed to get in here yet. In 2000 to 2005, there was a major national project, and this was to produce engineering maths. And the result of this project, the lingering, lasting result of this project, are a huge number of very well written and well tested workbooks, PDF workbooks, okay, that cover the whole core engineering math syllabus, right the way from basic algebra through statistics, multivariable calculus, Fourier series, mathematical physics, a whole bunch of stuff. What we're doing in Edinburgh this summer is that we are going to implement those PDF files, at least the ones we're going to use in our own teaching, in the style of George and Richard's FAC using Stack. So here we have just one quiz. And if I just preview, that quiz, you can see that we have materials. These are taken directly from the existing Helm workbooks. And then we have Stack exercises associated with those, okay? We started this 2 weeks ago today. We've started these quizzes. These ones are now finished. We need 73 of these workbooks for our 80 credits of engineering maths teaching over the next year. And we are collaborating with Loughborough, Manchester, Coventry, and a number of other institutions. And we will release the whole of the Helm workbooks that we create under Creative Commons as these interactive online quizzes. And I think that will really, I mean, originally Helm had an interactive online support. Over the 15 years, those question mark perception stuff, the Flash applets, all that other stuff has just died. And we're going to rejuvenate this summer at least the bits that we need for our teaching as a rapid response to COVID, to discharge our responsibilities for engineering education. So, community developed materials. So there's a lot going on, and I have overrun, Christian. Thank you for your patience here. I am eating into my questioning time. Future of Stack, I want to get some text-based question formats so we can put our materials in version control. I keep saying that. It's sort of working, but I haven't released it yet. I'm sorry. Matty mentioned input 2 to re-engineer the inputs. That's another major internal engineering that we will do over the next couple of years. And that will help us with the feature requests. So very rushed, a lot there because there's a lot going on. It's a very exciting time, and I hope I've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Thank you very much, Chris, for a lightning move through a lot of content there. I have a question, and one that links to a question on the Moodle site, which is actually related to these Helm workbooks. So I guess one of the significant uses of these was via math support centres, where students might not necessarily have the infrastructure to be able to run these tests. So so linked to that, question from Christopher Jobling on the Moodle site, can questions be authored in stacks and delivered in a VLE other than Moodle? So I guess on that wider point.
Right, absolutely. So we don't have Moodle as our institutional VLE, we use Blackboard, and we connect the institutional Blackboard over to a Moodle site that we're running. And we may be in a position to offer that service over the next year. We may be able to host a big and powerful server, and colleagues who want to use these Helm workbooks may be able to link. This is all happening so quickly, right? I mean, 2 weeks ago we'd done nothing, and we've got all those workbooks in progress now, right? It's really happening very, very quickly. So I don't have all the answers, but this seems to me to be a very efficient way to discharge our responsibilities to our engineering colleagues and our science colleagues to do a good job teaching with a style that we've pioneered in Edinburgh, to put the book inside the quiz that focuses students' attention in a really clear design. And we want to push forward on that over the summer and see how far we get. So yeah, we may be able to host that for colleagues who can't set something up this year. Who knows what will happen in the long term? I can't make any promises. So contact me if you want more information.
Thanks, Chris. The second question actually relates to either stack or numbers. So I think what we'll do is we'll hold back, and I'll ask that after Christian's talk if we have time. So I'll thank you again, and we'll move on now. So Christian Lawson Perfect is going to update us on developments with numbers.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Let's start sharing my screen. Okay, so again, like Chris, I think this is going to be very rushed because there's a lot's happened. We should maybe run this conference more often, or I should leave more time in the timetable for these sessions. First of all, I'll talk a few things about the community of use of numbers. As Chris was saying, this is a real boom time for e-assessment in maths. So numbers has seen huge growth in use around the world. It's been translated to lots more languages. I think the new ones since the last time, Chinese and Vietnamese, and I think Hebrew I can pick out in particular. So that's really good to see that people are using numbers around the world. We've had contributions from a variety of people. It's still pretty much my thing. These other people have all been quite small contributions. I'd really like more people to get involved in development of numbers itself, but that requires funding, I guess. So that's something for the future. And something really important is that numbers is now used to power the Scholar assessment system, which is used throughout Scottish schools. They've been working on that for years, and they finally got it out. So that's around about 400,000 children in Scotland will now use numbers. So that's very big. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a load of new features in a very short period of time, which is not great because they all need quite a lot of explanation. So I rewrote the pattern matching system, which is used to control the simplification rules. And you can now ask for the student's expression to match a certain pattern in order for it to be marked correct, which solves the problem of a student entering their answer in a certain form. So that's really powerful. That work came out of a discussion I had at EAMS 2018 with Robert Stanyan and Chris Sangwin. In fact, I've been trying to think how to do this, and we sort of nailed down how it would work there. So that was a good consequence of EAMS 2018. As we started using numbers for the sciences, it became obvious that we need high precision numbers. So we now have a few more number types. We have pure integers, we have rationals, so there's no accuracy lost when you divide. And decimal uses this arbitrary, fixed precision arithmetic library, which is considerably more accurate than the standard floating points that JavaScript uses and which numbers used before now. A little feature is it's now quite easy to embed a numbers test without any kind of score tracking in a web page or blog post. In WordPress, for example, you can just paste the link and it will put the numbers test there. That uses the O-embed standard, so anything that will use that will use it. So this is in fact a live question right now. Something I wish I'd talked about yesterday. I wish I'd made myself space. There's a really good scripting language called Euclides, which I discovered years ago for describing geometrical diagrams. I've re-implemented that and made it a numbers extension. It's a real problem, that the tension between ease of use for making diagrams, like apps like GeoGebra, which end up really heavy, and the ability to programmatically create diagrams, which will involve some coding. I think Euclides made a really good balance between the two. It's quite, if you do a little bit of coding, quite easy to make a really nice diagram. So that exists now. I did a lot of work on accessibility of diagrams as well for that. And a really good trick that I found from another package called G9 is that you can make things interactive quite easily using numerical solvers. So I've created this diagram here and just marked that I think blue point as draggable. So that means that whenever you try and drag it, a numerical solver tries to change the parameters of the diagram in order to draw it where your mouse moves to. So that's a really easy way of adding interactivity. I like that a lot. So this year's big change, those were all 2019 features. The big change this year is explore mode. And this is a completely new way of presenting questions. Rather than having a fixed list of parts where the student has to enter an answer in each one, in each part, and they're all fixed at the beginning. Now you just get the student to answer one part at a time. And based on what they do or what they choose to move to next, you can offer them different choices for the next parts to move to. Really, it's similar to what Matty's doing with stateful. So here I have, in fact, no maths being rendered, so let's just reload that page. So yeah, a question about factorizing a quadratic. So if I don't know how to answer this question, I can choose to see a hint. And I can work out the discriminant. If I can get another hint with that. So really, it's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of question. I'm going to guess it's 1. Oh, that's going to be 2, isn't it? No, it was 1. There we go. So now that I've entered that answer and got it correct, I can move on to the next part, into the root. And I think the authoring interface for this is really important. It's something Matty realized as well. So I did a lot of work on that. But I don't have time to show you. Moving on. Something that we've always needed but not quite had is the ability to catch wrong answers or to allow for more than one correct answer in a way that isn't caught by the normal marking algorithms. So there's a new feature where you can say alternative answers. So you have your question part and it has an expected answer. You make a copy of that has a different expected answer or different marking settings, like the number of decimal places for a number, and a specific feedback message for that alternative. When the student's answer is marked, it finds the version that would award the most credit and uses that, and you can award partial marks, or you can show the student a particular feedback message. So here's that in use. And this example, in fact, I picked from the DEWIS team's paper on mal rules. So I think that's going to be really useful. A nice, easy way of saying there's something I'm expecting students to do wrong here and to give feedback. Another little thing, the vast majority, I think, of our numbers use in the maths degree at Newcastle is this formative practice material. It's just available throughout the semester for the students to access. And the exam interface, where they're presented with a list of numbered questions that they have to work through, isn't the best for that. If you go in, you want to practice a particular topic, you want to find that straight away. So now there's an option you can tick to say this exam is in menu mode, where instead of a list of numbered questions, you get shown this menu. All the question names are shown. You can group them, so you can go right into a particular thing that you want to do, and still we can track progress. So I think that's a nice user experience addition. And finally, I think this came up yesterday or this morning, the problem of organising massive banks of content. We have thousands of questions internally at Newcastle, which it's quite hard when you know you've written a question on a certain subject and you can't quite find it. The search tool works okay, but really organising, like clumping things together is the way to do it, I think. So now within the numbers editor, there's a proper folders interface, so you can organise the content with their project however you like. So I think that's, again, it's one of those quality of life things that ends up being much more useful than some grand theoretical edition like Explore Mode. I think that might be my last one. Oh, no, accessibility. Yeah, I did a lot of work on accessibility. I sat down and spent a few weeks really making sure I'd covered as much as I could. To begin with, we now have accessibility statements for numbers. So if you want to use it, I think more and more institutions need to see that. It's now the law in the UK that we have to provide accessible material for our students. So being able to point to that and say, this is already good is important. And then finally, I've use the ARIA Live attribute for when stuff changes, screen readers will read it out. And I've made sure that all the colours in the default theme and the contrast meet the WCAG AAA standard, which is the highest anybody can ask for. Okay, so that was everything I've done in the past 2 years. I've copied this slide from last time without changing too many of the numbers. We have pretty much as many open issues as we did 2 years ago. We have pretty much as many on wish list. Not as many on good first issue, and I think that's it's really good that people have been taking on these things, marking tasks as something that would be good for somebody to get into straight away. Someone who's new to the project, that's really worked. So I'm going to try and top that up a bit, and as ever, help either translating numbers or adding code or just feature requests is always very welcome. And I think that's it. I think I kept to 10 minutes there as well.
Thanks very much, Christine. Yeah, I think we're ahead of schedule now. So thanks again for going through a lot of material very quickly. So I'll pick up on the question that was asked after the stack section and ask both you and Chris, if that's all right. So have Stack and Numbers made attempts or have plans to publicize the applications in the US?
To publicize, no, because we don't publicize anywhere.
I think maybe to advertise might be as much to advertise.
Yeah, people are using numbers in the USA. We're talking over each other. You go.
Sorry, I think by publicize, I think advertise was the implication.
Yeah, no. We don't have time for that. I think Chris wants to say something now. Oh, and he can't because he's muted.
Thanks, Christian. You muted me. All right. Yeah. Well, I've been to many meetings in the States and North America generally. I was at the Fields Institute a few years ago. So yeah, it's difficult. I think WebWork did a great job involving the professional societies in America. The National Problem Library that is written in WebWork is great. Has a lot of stuff in it, and you know, each of us really only needs one system for our own work, don't we? So there it is. I quite like the fact there are lots of systems at the moment. It allows people to try out ideas and so on. I think that's sort of reasonably healthy. I don't think there are so many that it's just a waste of everyone's time. So I don't mind that. Yeah, users are very welcome.
Thanks both. So question from Martin Greenhow, Christian, on translation. So Martin says, MathsEG uses Google Translate to automatically translate into different languages. Is this viable, or is the accuracy not good enough? So perhaps you could comment on the advantage of contributors.
Yeah, it's not good enough. I think that's straightforward. It is getting better and better, but I absolutely wouldn't depend on it for students to use. There's always a chance it's going to translate something in a way that you didn't mean. That's going to cause you problems. And the kind of technical language we use in STEM assessments, I would not depend on it.
Thanks, Christian. I don't think we've had any more questions, so I think Mike, you asked me to unmute you. Did you have a comment on the last question there?
Just a little bit. I mean, I have, certainly I'm aware of Stack and Numbers because from attending the 2016, and I've been aware of Stack for much longer than that. So there's a certain amount of mention of that and awareness of that among the WebWork community, but we may not have pushed it as much as possible. I disagree a little bit with Chris. WebWork is great, but I think that there's having a plethora of things that you can choose from and ideas that you can choose from. My Open Math is also quite popular here in the United States, and you may not be as aware of it over on your side of the ocean. I think it's really great to have 4 or 5 of these things. We can steal ideas from each other. They're all open source, and they are slowly converging.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so there are no more questions on that section. So that that neatly leads us onto Mike's update on WebWork. So we're going to play that recording now. Caught Christian by surprise there, I think.
2020. I want to tell you about some recent developments in WebWork, the online homework system, that have occurred in the last 4 years since I spoke here at the conference 2016. One thing about those earlier lectures, our servers have changed, and so many of the links don't work anymore. You'll have to replace hosted 2 and devel 3 with demo, the new server that we've got, and then they should work. WebWork is similar to iMath AS with David Lippman, which David Lippman described to you on Wednesday. At the close of my lecture in 2016, I expressed some concern about what was going to happen to WebWork in the future. I needn't have worried. As you've already heard 2 lectures about the activities going on at Roger Morris University from Monica Van Duren and from Mariana Bonanome at City Tech, and you'll hear more on Monday from Jake Medina. I'll present some pointers on other recent ongoing WW developments. One that I'm really excited about is the extension of WebWork to other languages, including 4-byte character languages such as Hebrew and Chinese and emoji for that matter. I'll show you some Hebrew. And embedding WebWork questions, the second item is embedding WebWork questions into HTML pages and OER textbooks. This is being done in collaboration with Pretext and LibreText. This is something that's really become quite a thing in the United States, at least. OER textbook authors would like to embed the problems in the textbooks themselves, as opposed to having students go to some other app in order to do the problems. And finally, I'll mention a little bit about community building. We've created the WebWork project organization and a board, and hopefully that will help keep us running into the future. When you're translating a language, there are two things you have to translate. First, you have to translate the Chrome on the boundary of the WebWork screen, the buttons and the labels and things like that. And then you have to translate the content of the problems themselves. There's not a lot we can do about the content of the problems. That you pretty much have to do by hand. But the labels and buttons are all in all of the software code is all tagged and extracted into a dictionary. And all you have to do is to translate the labels and buttons in that dictionary, create a new dictionary. So you don't have to go back into the code and change the text there. So Hebrew. Nathan Wallach at Technion University has been the lead on this project, and in fact he's been one of the people helping to push the localization, internationalization of WebWork in general. Let me just show you an example of what happens on our local server here. There it is. So this thing was written and translated by, sorry, this wasn't translated. These things here were automatically translated. We didn't have translations for these. These things like the submit button and the guest button, these were translated automatically. Let's take a look at the problems themselves. All of these are automatic translations from the dictionary. The text here is translated by hand, although probably the code is the same as the English version. Some of these, many of these were written separately. Nathan wrote a lot of problems himself, but some of them probably started as the basis of the English version. Here's an example of a calculus course that Nathan is teaching right at the moment. So Technion has completely gone over to using WebWork for their homework. Nathan is very busy writing content in Hebrew and presenting it to his students. Here's the next problem, the next problem after that. Move on to French. The lead implementer there has been Julie Tremblay at the Collège de Bois de Boulogne, and with a lot of other contributors. Here's a sample of on our local server here of what French problems look like. I got to get used to going from left to right again. Go in as guest. Here's a sample problem. Let's see if there's a more interesting homework section here. Okay, this is the kind of thing that they've done. Here's their site. They've actually developed with the Centre de Collégial de Développement de Matériel Didactique, has created a WebWork site where you can host a WebWork course in French. So that's quite a contribution on their part. And here's where the French questions are stored, the GitHub, where they have already a large collection of problems written in French. So I leave you with those pointers to investigate if you're interested in them. Another person who's been very active is Enrique Acosta in Colombia, who has been writing questions, WebWork questions in Spanish, and also has a website. Let's just go straight to his website. In fact, let's go to his course on differential equations. Again, we can log in as a guest. That's the bottom button there. Here's a sample of some of the homework problems. Again, these things were translated just by a dictionary, and then the translations of the problem themselves had to be done by hand. Although you could usually reuse the code from the original problems. They've done more. They've got a Spanish tutorial on how to use WebWork on that same website. So hopefully we'll have a lot more people from Mexico and from South America using WebWork. And again, here is Enrique's GitHub, where he is busy creating the open problem, a Spanish version of the open problem library. We're not 100% sure how we should organize this, but for the moment, what we plan to do is to have separate libraries, one for each language, kind of loosely coordinated, same kind of organization, but the Spanish problems and the French problems and the English problems would all be in separate libraries, and you just switch libraries when you want a problem in a different language. There are some other languages in which the labels have been partially translated, but there aren't any problems available. You can take a quick look at them here. It also tells us something about our efforts to do this language translation. Let's say Turkish is fun. You can see that there's some of the problems, some of the stuff has been translated in Turkish at least. Chinese. But we're looking for contributors who can help more with that. So Enrique's workflow for constructing the PO directory uses a spreadsheet. You can see here is the original name right here, and here is the translation. And this gives you some context as to where things are. Another option, instead of using the spreadsheet, is to use transfix.com, which also is an online system that does that also helps you create they're called PO dictionaries to do the translation. Okay. Embedding questions in HTML. So here's the simplest example right here. This is just an HTML page. You can see it's running GeoGebra inside that problem. It's an active problem. You can answer it. You can check the answers online, and so on. So this uses very elementary technology. It's basically just an iframe. You can embed an iframe anywhere in HTML. We're bouncing it, in this case, off my server, demo.webwork.rochester.edu, but you could use any server, any WebWork server, any modern one at least. It needs to have a course, which I've called a daemon course here, and it needs to have a user ID and I've called daemon, and he has to have at least TA privileges. And then you can, the problems that you can pose are any problem that's in the library. This is the string that tells you which the problem is. So it's very simple to add WebWork problems to any HTML page. You can do this with Pretext book. So Pretext is founded by Robert Beezer, University of Puget Sound. It's an XML textbook markup that's a superset of tech. Its aim is to write once and read anywhere. So you can get output in HTML, PDF, ebooks, Braille, other things, stay tuned. And it aims to automatically give OER authors the quality production values associated with commercial textbooks. Matt Belkins at Grand Valley State University uses this in his active calculus example. Let's take a quick look at that. So here's the text of the problem. And down here at the bottom, let's see, it's one section. We start to have exercise. So these are the web work exercises embedded into the text. At the moment, they're basically embedded as iframes. One of our projects this summer is to try and have more sophisticated ways of embedding these problems. It's a little bit more secure, less likely to be tampered with. The person who's done the most to develop these questions in pretext is Alex Jordan, and I've got several links here that you can look at and see how they work. Let's see. This might be worth looking at. You can see that they just insert quick questions in the middle of chapters and so on to see if you're following along properly. That's the idea that they're aiming for. There are some other links I'll let you explore on your own. Similar things are being done with LibreText. LibreText is founded by Delmer Larson, who's at the Department of Chemistry at UC Davis. And his idea is to host all of the OER textbooks from all the STEM subjects on one platform. And the goal is to gather them all together and allow it that you can mix and match selections, they call it remix, to create customized text for an instructor's class. And he plans to have MyOpenMath and WebWork embedded homework questions in much the same ways with pretext, and that's a project we're working on this summer. I'll leave you to explore some of the links yourself. Finally, the WebWork project. The umbrella organization, the WebWork project, has been formed with a board and a bank account. It does not yet have nonprofit status. We're hoping for that. And it's going to help shepherd and coordinate and support individual WW initiatives past now that the NSF grants have run out. Here's a link to, again, on that demo site. Robin Cruz is currently the president. Past president was John Travis. I'm the past president. I'm still treasurer because I still have the bank account. Mariana is one of the program coordinator. Danny Glynn and Timothy Flowers are the rest of the people on the board. So we're hoping that that will keep us going for a while. Here are the important WebWork sites if you want to explore more on your own. I put these in the section, the WebWork section on Moodle. The wiki is where most of the information is. All of this, the infrastructure for all of these things has been rebuilt in the last year. We're still curating some of the material, but things like search and so on work much better than they used to. Thank you very much.
So Mike joins us now. Thank you, Mike, for that excellent update on WebWork. So if anyone has questions, please pose those in the Moodle talks area. So Mike, going back to the translate point, I guess thinking about accommodating different languages and cultures is more about more than just the text. Are you also accommodating different conventions for numbers for the input of student answers?
We have the infrastructure is there for it, but we really haven't done it much yet. Actually, the infrastructure was probably always there to change but no, we haven't done it systematically yet. As you can see, we've got. It's a little bit different on this side of the Atlantic. Why we really started off English, going to other languages, we're way behind the rest of you on this. And changing from one character 1 byte characters to 4 byte characters was a major infrastructure change. So that's what we've done at the moment, and we're kind of waiting to, for people to start translating things and ask for features such as localization. We've always had time localization. Numbers, I don't think we have that properly set up yet.
Thanks, Mike. So there's some comments on that in the chat from Christian. Thank you, and also a useful link there to some cutting edge work. Thank you.
Yeah, Alex is on the line here, and he's been doing. Let me say one thing about that. You were talking about, Sanguin was talking about putting the textbook in the problems. And the big push here has been putting the problems in the textbook itself. And both pretext and LibreText are built on that idea, and as is a lot of the OER infrastructure in the United States.
Excellent. Okay. There's a comment about proofs in iMathAS on the Moodle site from Ingo Dan, making some attempts with iMathAS. Is this something that you've dabbled with WebWork?
Doing proofs? I don't know exactly. There's something called a Parker problem, which is the kind of thing in which you put the steps of the proof in little boxes, and then you have to order the boxes in order to get the proof correct. And we've had that for some time. I just recently found out that it has a name, that it is in fact called Parker problem, and is something that computer science people have been using. Runestone, by the way, which is mentioned in that thing that I just put up, is another kind of LMS type thing, and the PTX people that's the pretext people are using that kind of to organize their questions and hold their textbooks and so on. And it allows for things like these Parker problems.
Nice, thanks, Mike. Okay, so there's no further questions. So what I'll do is I'll just pull up the program for Monday. So we're back Monday morning, 9 o'clock. So we've got some lightning talks to kick off next week. Just a reminder of the Moodle site. So there's quite a lot going on there. There are areas for discussion. One thing we were just talking about before this session started was trying to include a little bit more for people who are new to e-assessment. So we're thinking that in the numbers section, and also if you have any advice for people starting out with e-assessment, please do add some items to the discussion section there. I guess with it being the end of the week, you're going to have a bit of time to reflect on what we've done so far. So if there's anything else that that you can think about that you'd like to see more of be discussed in that, please do add to the discussion forum. So finally, just say thank you to our 3 developers for their updates, and I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend, and we'll catch up with you next week. Thank you.